Thanks, guys, for another great carrier update. Now it's time to welcome our first in-studio guest of the day. We've actually got two of them coming in today, which
wow.
I'd love to have back in office for us. We've got Omar Singh, who's the president and founder over at Surge Transportation. Omar, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, great to be here.
You're a familiar face for FreightWaves. You're up on our website a lot. You've been on What the Truck with these guys all the time.
Absolutely.
But it's great to have you on FreightWaves now, especially to talk digital routing guides.
Right.
And actually in person.
Yeah, I know.
Nuts,
back in
right?
studio. So
That's
I
right.
love it. Yeah, thank goodness
Awesome.
it's coming back.
Awesome.
So let's talk a little bit about the article that you just put up on freightwaves.com. We know that digitization is the name of the game right now, and it's more than just a fancy buzzword, right? It's things that companies are actually doing to employ and get better in their strategy, and that now extends to the traditional routing guide. Talk us through a little bit of your article.
Well, yeah, I think that a lot of the buzz around digital transformation in the last couple of years has been around what companies are doing for their own digital transformation, right? How is Surge making their digital transformation? How is, XYZ, how is digitization affecting companies? But really, I think what's interesting is that we're beginning to see how it's affecting the routing guide. So it's a digital transformation of the routing guide, whereas all of the traditional ways of conducting an RFP and awarding freight and a very kind of linear forecast is changing, and is changing as a result of the digital capabilities of APIs, real-time pricing, and real-time rates, the speed with which things can change. And so shippers are adopting the capability of getting information and rates in real time, and it's just changing the complete RFP strategy.
Yeah, so when some of the things that come to mind is over 34 years, all the fun with the RFPs, right? I mean, and all that's going to be gone. Sending faxes back and forth, which is no great loss. But
Yeah.
so the whole process, right, has kind of changed over the last couple of years with COVID, right? We saw these kind of micro bids that started coming out. Is that driving that a little bit, and will this facilitate quicker reaction time of contracted rates and routing guides to changing conditions in the market?
Well, I think, the changing conditions really forced the adoption to, people want to source capacity faster, right? So rather than traditional routing guide, you've got 5 carriers who all have, 2 hours to accept a load. So 10 hours, the tender's out there, it might not get accepted before it goes to spot. Now it's just a matter of minutes. So all of the carriers who are bidding on a load, the load is created. Within minutes, the carrier, the shipper has the rates, and they can select a truck, while the capacity is still available. Because in the last couple of years, the name of the game has been sourcing capacity faster.
Sure, absolutely.
And now, I think that, present day, now that spot rates are falling, it's also a testament to fair market rates, right? As rates were going up, shippers really didn't want to pay more, but they had to source capacity. Now that the shippers who are using a digital routing guide are the ones that are saving the most right now. Because as rates are coming down, they just instantaneously are able to save money.
Gotcha.
So, Omar, I'm curious on your opinion about quality that comes from digitization, and if when you're cutting off sides of the traditional routing guide, right, as you mentioned in your article, you're taking a little off the left, a little off the right, a little off the top and bottom. Do you run the risk of losing quality in your carriers if you're trying to go as quickly as you can?
Well, I think it's the opposite, because what a lot of shippers are doing is they're curating a community of providers who they want to operate in that digital environment. So it's usually a curated community of their best providers to say, if all else fails, if the routing guide fails, who are my top 6 or my top 10, right? Top 20. A lot of shippers work with hundreds of providers, but they're not looking for hundreds in the digital environment. They're looking for half a dozen or a dozen.
Yeah. So how does this affect the relationship between the shipper and those carriers that are in those top tiers of the routing guide? Does this produce or facilitate a collaboration there to reduce the waterfall effect and falling out of your routing guide because of sourcing and changes in capacity or pricing?
Yeah, well, I think it makes the partnership more strategic, right? To say that we're really going to make an investment in technology to partner with you. We're going to make an investment in the relationship. We're going to trust you, more than some of the other providers that may be in the network. 100, 150 providers for some large shippers.
Right.
The relationship is stronger. The rates usually are better. They're not getting gouged, because anytime you have a really strategic relationship with someone, even when rates are up, you charge what you have to get the freight moved.
Sure.
But you don't want to kind of overcharge or gouge, which sometimes happen in the spot market. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh,
and
yeah,
then-
absolutely.
Yeah, and then they can rely on the quality, you know, to know that it's there.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the way that kind of things have existed in the last 2 years, this freight market has been just incredibly kind of hyper sustained, I want to say. Everybody was talking, you know, 6 months into the pandemic, no, now 12 months, 18, 2 years, and now we've got people saying this is going to last us through 2023, possibly even later. Can you talk about what happens on a down cycle with this type of digitization, and if it's still relevant when we move into a time when freight isn't so hot or when you're not having to work so hard to source its capacity?
Yeah, I think that that's when sort of the shippers are able to make up for some of the spend that they've had in the last couple of years, because now they're not locked into a high rate for 12 months, whereas the market's going down. So they're really able to save. And, you know, the benefit, like anything, is really it's a long-term play, right? So maybe a 3-year cycle, so you're paying a little bit more when the market's up, but you're sourcing capacity. That's the name of the game. You have to get your freight moved. And then as the market's coming down now, every month over month, you're just saving more money. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds. Is there ability for the carriers to work in collaboration with this to kind of set parameters in the digitization of the routing guide, and agree to, because there's natural seasonality fluctuations, right? And then there's other inputs like fuel and so on and so forth that change those fluctuations and change the costing of those carriers, but maintain a specific margin of profit, which everybody agrees, as we do business, everybody deserves some sort of profit. Is there a way to negotiate that so that the digitization keeps it and just fluctuates your specific price to keep you in that tier? Or?
We have customers who ask us to set our margin at a certain percentage of a benchmark tool that they're comfortable with.
Right.
So that's certainly possible.
Gotcha.
And the ask is, if it goes beyond a certain margin percentage, then just don't return a rate, because we want to just see what other alternatives are.
Gotcha.
But with this sort of notion that so long as you're within the range of whatever benchmark tool they feel comfortable with, then we're going to award you the freight.
Gotcha.
So just treat us fair, right? I think that's what you're asking. Treat us fairly.
Well, I mean,
and then,
it sounds like I'm just trying to play devil's advocate and get out the information, because it sounds to me like some carriers might be like, well, digitization's not going to be good. I'm going to be losing out on this, and it changes the playing field a little bit, right? So what are the new rules is what I'm trying to get to with those carriers.
I think everybody just has to be, you know, so long as it's profitable, right? Everybody has to operate in fair market rates.
Sure.
Right? They just have to operate in an environment where, when rates are high, that's great for carriers, and it's harder for shippers and consumers, because shippers have to pass that price on to consumers. And then when it's low, it just can't be low enough. I mean, it still has to be high enough that it's profitable to operate. Right.
You need your vendors and your carriers to be profitable.
Right. Right.
You don't want to use them out of existence, right?
Right. Yeah. You don't want to bleed them out.
Bleed them out. Right.
Right. Yeah. But then, it'll just they'll be making less when the market's down and more when it's up. But I think it allows a collaborative relationship and conversations to take place with shippers and providers.
Can I do a follow-up real quick?
Go for
it. How do you see this affecting that, the intermediary, right? Gets squeezed.
Right.
I mean, when pricing goes up, when truck prices go up, there's this notion that the intermediaries are making money hand over fist. Well, their top line's great. Bottom line, not so much sometimes, right?
Yeah.
How does this affect that type of thing?
Well, I think it's... if the intermediary is able to have the proper carrier relationships, right? Because a lot of times when we have strategic relationships with carriers, I don't say, hey, do this for me at the lower rate, right? Because we're, strategic. I say, just give me your truck. I'm going to pay you what the rate is, because I have to. So we have to be able to have a collaborative enough relationship with our shipper customers that we can charge what we have to in order to get it covered and still make, a margin, right? And then when it's going down, it's the same way. So with that strategic carrier, we'll say, listen, I have to pay the market rate because it's going down, but I'm going to give it to you, rather than somebody else. Yeah. And so that partnership is to say, we're going to agree to live in this market, but we're also going to, I'm going to give you the loads and you're going to give me the truck.
Right.
So.
Understandable.
Gotcha.
Omar, it's been great to have you in with us today. Before we let you go, give us a little bit of an update. What's coming up next in Surge Transportation for you guys?
Oh, we're growing quickly. We're going to open a Dallas office next month. Yeah, so just really enjoying the ride and doing a good job for carriers and shippers.
Awesome.
go.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for being
Excellent
here
stuff.
today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for the content that you're putting up on our freightwaves.com website, and go follow him on LinkedIn. Go connect, because your LinkedIn profile is great. Tons of great information coming there as well.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. We'll be back to start off a brand new hour of FreightWaves Now coming up in just a few minutes.